City streets were buzzing, horns blaring as the crowd flowed across the intersection. Victoria, distracted by her phone, didn't see the oncoming car, but he did. Marcus, a black man in his mid-30s with rough hands, tired eyes, and the quiet strength of someone who had faced more closed doors than open ones, moved instinctively. He pulled her back, the car screeching past by inches. For him, it was just another day of survival. For her, it was the first time in years that someone acted without wanting anything in return. But her pride wouldn't let her thank him, not yet. Instead, she saw him as a curiosity, maybe even a test. Could a man like him, middle class, struggling, invisible to the circles she walked in, be trusted? Could he be different from all the others who had betrayed her? Her life was carved in marble, polished with privilege, wrapped in silk. But beneath that empire was a loneliness she never admitted, a distrust born from being surrounded by people who only loved her for her fortune. Every smile had a price tag. Every touch carried expectation. She craved honesty, but in her world, honesty was rare currency. Then came the day everything shifted. Marcus, a black man in his mid-30s with rough hands, tired eyes, and the quiet strength of someone who had faced more closed doors than open ones, carried struggles of his own. His world was not one of marble floors or glass towers, but of resilience, paying bills late, working jobs that barely covered rent, and still holding on to dignity when the world tried to strip it away. She began to test him in subtle, cutting ways, inviting him into her world of glittering lights and whispered judgments. Each time he walked into her spaces, eyes followed him, some mocking, some dismissive, some outright cruel. A black man in rooms built to remind him he didn't belong. She watched him closely, how he held himself when others sneered, how he stayed quiet when the whispers grew louder. Every challenge she threw, he met with patience, dignity, and a strength she couldn't shake. And yet, she wasn't the only one watching. Others saw him as nothing more than a shadow, someone to laugh at, someone unworthy of her presence. The weight of their prejudice pressed in, threatening to break the calm he carried. Every challenge she threw, he met with patience, dignity, and a strength she couldn't shake. In private halls, away from the eyes of the crowd, she looked at him with cold curiosity, searching for cracks, pushing him to falter. Yet each time, he met her gaze without anger, without arrogance, only with a steadiness she had never known. It all came to a head one evening when an insult, sharp and public, cut through the air. A man at her side mocked Marcus openly, daring to reduce him to less in front of a crowd that laughed. And for a moment, silence hung heavy. Would he break? Would he fight back? The humiliation burned, but Marcus stood tall, his voice steady, his presence unshaken. And then the unexpected happened. Victoria's laughter, once aligned with the crowd, faltered. She saw in that moment the truth she had tried so hard to bury. He wasn't weak. He wasn't lesser. He was stronger than any of them, stronger than her, because he carried dignity in places where cruelty tried to strip it away. And the room fell silent, the arrogance of others exposed against the roar of his quiet strength. Room that once echoed with mockery now sat in stunned silence. She reached for his hand, her eyes wet with something she could no longer hide: regret, respect, and a love she had been too proud to name. The whispers in the crowd no longer mattered. In that moment, she understood his worth had never been hers to measure, and her tests had revealed far more about her own blindness than about his loyalty. Together, they walked out of that glittering hall, leaving behind the weight of judgment and stepping into a truth brighter than any chandelier. For him, it wasn't about her wealth, her world, or even her love. It was about standing tall, unbroken,
against a system that had tried to reduce him to less. For her, it was about unlearning the prejudice she hadn't even known she carried, and finally seeing the man who had risked nothing less than dignity to protect her, even when she doubted him.
But their story is not just theirs. It's the story of countless others who face the quiet, cutting blades of prejudice every day, on streets, in workplaces, in schools, in the unspoken rules that divide us from them. Not every ending finds justice. Not every insult is silenced. But moments like this remind us that change begins when courage collides with truth, and when someone chooses to see beyond the labels society forces upon us. So, the question remains: when the world around you sneers, mocks, or dismisses someone for who they are, will you turn away, or will you stand even when it's uncomfortable? Because silence protects the cruelty, but courage can change everything.